taking place while in Pakistan. Senior intelligence sources are telling us that an arrest has been made. An American-born Al-Qaeda spokesperson by the name of Adam Gadhan. You probably recognize his image right there. He has been on the wanted list for years now. He was charged with treason back in 2006, and there was $1 million reward out for information leading to his arrest. You've been hearing our correspondents from around the globe talk about there may have been a recent fallout involving some of the top lieutenants of Al-Qaeda, and at the center of that fallout may have been this young man right here. So quite possibly, he may have been turned in by some of his own people, or perhaps it's just simply the result of good intelligence work that may have come with the cooperation from Pakistani sources, perhaps even U.S. intelligence and maybe even a British intelligence. But right now, U.S. not confirming that arrest. Only high-ranking Pakistani officials are confirming that arrest right now. Our senior political analyst, David Gergen, has called in and is going to help guide us through the political ramifications that all of this transpiring just might have on this White House. Peter, especially at a time when people have been questioning this White House's stance on national security, on international security as well, the commitment to the ongoing war on terrorism, and now this type of arrest taking place, according to Pakistani officials. How helpful would that be for this White House at this juncture?
The President will find this news very reassuring and helpful, both in Iraq and in Pakistan, as he struggles here at home with his domestic legislative agenda. The Iraq elections have been pivotal for the Obama administration all along. I can just tell you, went in to talk to them, they've all been saying, watch these elections. If the elections go smoothly, we got by without too much violence, and people come out and vote as they have today, and then the Iraqis are able to form a stable government. That is going to pave the way for all American combat troops to stay on schedule and coming out of Iraq in about 6 months. So this is very important today in Iraqi history from the United States point of view, and could leave behind, from the point of view of the Obama administration, the hope of the Obama administration, of course, is to leave behind a stable country, which would be important for the Middle East. And by the way, George W. Bush is going to get some credit as well for that. And at the same time, in the war in Afghanistan, it's always been understood by the administration that Pakistan is a key player there, the most volatile. And there's been a lot of, as you know, a sense on the part of the American governments, both Bush and Obama governments, that the Pakistani officials were not cooperating in cracking down on Al-Qaeda and Taliban. Now we've got this arrest today. If the Pakistanis really did play a significant role in the arrest of this American-born spokesman for Al-Qaeda, that would yet be another indication, and a helpful indication for the government, U.S. government, that the Pakistanis are beginning to play ball with us, that they're a better partner, and that, too, is good news for President Obama.
And, David, while we look at images of the elections taking place in Iraq, the president underscoring he's about to at least 50,000 voting booths at more than 8,000 polling stations across Iraq. Why is it so important for this president to come out today? While polls have closed in Iraq, this election did not come without violence. More than 30 people were killed. Why is it still so important for this president to make a comment about this national election in Iraq?
I think to a significant degree, as you know, Iraq has slipped below the radar screen, and we've got about 100,000 troops. That's what he inherited over there in Iraq. Now, I don't know what the exact number is right now, but a primary objective of his whole administration, and one of the reasons he ran for president, was to bring Iraq to a peaceful resolution. So he was left in better shape than anybody anticipated by the Bush administration. But coming in, this was a lot rides on getting out of Iraq safely. If he gets mired down there or bogged down, his whole presidency could get bogged down. So this is it's not at all surprising he would call attention to this. Flag the importance of the Iraqis voting. After all, this is only the second major parliamentary election in Iraq since the fall of Saddam, and they haven't had a major parliamentary election since 2005. So this was a big deal, this election today. And yes, they had lots of violence. There were lots of efforts to disrupt, and by last report, some 38 people or more have been killed. But the fact that so many Iraqis bravely went to the polls in defiance of the terrorists is also a very reassuring sign. Now, whether they can form a government that's stable and it works well together, that's a related but separate question. That comes next. we'll have to see how this unfolds. But the news today, from all reports, seems to be very encouraging.
So do you see this election as even more significant, more important than the December 2005 first national election, free election?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's part of a long story of how, one forms a country, and that was very important at the time. But this is very, very important today. I can't. If this election had been called off, or if nobody had come out because of all the violence, and we turned into a disaster, then there would have been a sense Americans can't leave. The American troops have to stay and keep this thing glued together. The degree to which this looks like the Iraqis can become a self-governing people, not a perfect democracy by any means, lots and lots of flaws, lots of corruption, all the rest. But it enables us to start getting out of there and putting them on their own, allowing them to govern on their own 2 feet. That's a huge step forward for us in the Middle East. And it's not, I think, unrelated that Vice President Biden is heading to the Middle East and may now try to jumpstart some of the talks with the Israelis and Palestinians. I think there's and you got to remember too that central to American policy right now is the question of Iran. That's going to be very important in the next 3 months. It's all part of that same neighborhood. But if they can get Iraq calmed down and get some things going on the Israeli-Palestinian side, maybe they can also get a better handle on Iran. All of that is sort of like right smack central to the great big pillars of Obama foreign policy. In fact, of American foreign policy stretching back to George W. Bush.
A senior political analyst, David Gergen, thanks so much. Appreciate that. Our Kate Baldwin is there at the White House near the Rose Garden, where the president is expected to emerge momentarily. Kate, what's happening there right now?
Hey there. Well, we are awaiting the president as we speak, so we will wait for that to happen, Frederica. But we did just get a statement from Defense Secretary Robert Gates, who spoke to reporters. And the statement is quite lengthy, but he does say in the statement that he did, on the Iraqi elections, that he did speak to General Odierno. And in the statement, he says that General Odierno's view is that the Iraq security forces have performed superbly, and the turnout is as high, if not higher, than earlier expectations. And Gates goes on to say, so all in all, a good day for the Iraqis and for all of us. And as David Gergen was talking about and we talked about earlier, you can expect that the President Obama will try to probably strike somewhat that same tone of kind of playing up the positive here and emphasizing the positive that is coming out on this day, and hopefully the positive that will continue in the days ahead, as there's so much is riding on U.S. involvement in Iraq on this election.
And Kate, thanks so much. I know you can't see it from your purview, but here's the President of the United States along with the Vice President.
Today, the people of Iraq went to the polls to choose their leaders in Iraq's second national election. By any measure, this was an important milestone in Iraqi history. Dozens of parties and coalitions fielded thousands of parliamentary candidates, men and women. Ballots were cast at some 50,000 voting booths. And in a strong turnout, millions of Iraqis exercised their right to vote with enthusiasm and optimism. Today's voting makes it clear that the future of Iraq belongs to the people of Iraq. The election was organized and administered by Iraq's independent High Electoral Commission with critical support from the United Nations. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis served as poll station workers and as observers. As expected, there were some incidents of violence as al-Qaeda in Iraq and other extremists tried to disrupt Iraq's progress by murdering innocent Iraqis who were exercising their democratic rights. But overall, the level of security and the prevention of destabilizing attacks speaks to the growing capability and professionalism of Iraqi security forces, which took the lead in providing protection at the polls. I also want to express my admiration for the thousands of Americans on the ground in Iraq, for our civilians and our men and women in uniform who continue to support our Iraqi partners. This election is also a tribute to all who have served and sacrificed in Iraq over the last 7 years, including many who have given their lives. We are mindful, however, that today's voting is the beginning and not the end of a long electoral and constitutional process. The ballots must be counted. Complaints must be heard, and Iraq, with the support of the United Nations, has a process in place to investigate and adjudicate any allegations of fraud. A parliament must be seated, leaders must be chosen, and a new government must be formed. All of these important steps will take time, not weeks, but months. In this process, the United States does not support particular candidates or coalitions. We support the right of the Iraqi people to choose their own leaders. And I commend the Iraqi government for putting plans into place to ensure security and basic services for the Iraqi people during this time of transition. We know that there will be very difficult days ahead in Iraq. There will probably be more violence. But like any sovereign, independent nation, Iraq must be free to chart its own course. No one should seek to influence, exploit, or disrupt this period of transition. Now is the time for every neighbor and nation to respect Iraq's sovereignty and territorial integrity. A new Iraqi government will face important decisions about Iraq's future. But as today's voting demonstrates, the Iraq people want disagreements to be debated and decided through a political process that provides security and prosperity for all Iraqis. And as they go forward, the Iraqi people must know that the United States will fulfill its obligations. We will continue with the responsible removal of the United States forces from Iraq. Indeed, for the first time in years, there are now fewer than 100,000 American troops serving in Iraq. By the end of August, our combat mission will end. As I said last year, when I announced our new strategy in Iraq, we will continue to advise and assist Iraqi security forces, carry out targeted counterterrorism operations with our Iraqi partners, and protect our forces and civilians. And by the end of next year, all U.S. troops will be out of Iraq. In the weeks and months ahead, the United States will continue to work closely with the Iraqi people as we expand our broad-based partnership based on mutual interest and mutual respect. And in that effort, I'm pleased that Vice President Biden will continue to play a leading role. On behalf of the American people, I congratulate the Iraqi people on their courage throughout this historic election. Today, in the face of violence from those who would only destroy, Iraqis took a step forward in the hard work of building up their country. The United States will continue to help them in that effort as we responsibly end this war and support the Iraqi people as they take control of their future. Thanks very much.
All right, President of the United States, along with the Vice President of the United States right there in the Rose Garden, keeping the comments strictly to the Iraq elections, national elections taking place today. President Obama congratulating the people of Iraq for what he calls their courage. Despite the fact there was violence that took place throughout the country, it did not deter people from exercising their right to vote. He says this voting is the beginning, not the end of a long constitutional process. Of course, first the ballots will be counted and investigated to make sure that there's no fraud. And he also talked about the success of this national elections is a prelude to the U.S. Continuing its removal of forces from Iraq with fewer than 100,000 U.S. troops there now. And he says the plan is to stay on course for the calendar. He says by the end of next year, all U.S. troops will be out of Iraq. There was no comment coming from the president there, as you noticed. No comment on the Pakistani intelligence forces saying that an American-born Al-Qaeda spokesperson has been arrested in Pakistan. Right now, U.S. still not commenting on that. The arrest of Adam Gadhan, 31 years old, born in California, and Pakistani forces say that he was arrested in Karachi.